that looking good?
Sorry.
That's okay.
It looks great. Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So it would be wonderful if everybody could just join me on a little bit of a grounding exercise and a prayer. If you want to close your eyes and connect both feet into the earth, down on the ground, and get kind of firmly rooted. And let's go ahead and take 3 deep breaths. You can do in through the nose and out through the mouth, kind of making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. And using your powers of visualization, I want you to imagine that there's this kind of gorgeous, swirling red energy that is down in your pelvic floor, that is getting more and more red, more and more rich crimson color as you breathe in. And that red color is really going to extend down off of the base of the spine, down through your chair or whatever it is that you're sitting on, and going down into the floor, through the floor, maybe the baseboards of your home or wherever you're sitting, down into the ground, into the soil, deep, deep, deep into the earth. You're firmly connected and grounded to the earth. And from this place of grounding, we're going to call in the 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. We're going to call in all of mine and yours, our helping spirits, all of mine and yours ancestors. We're calling on Father Sky above and Mother Earth below, and calling out and into our heart where that beautiful Mother Goddess Earth and the Father Sky God above meet, so that we're connected today through our hearts. We're connected to the information that we're going to get through our hearts. And I just ask all of these helping energies that what needs to be said, and what needs to be heard, be heard. And go ahead and open your eyes. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm excited. It's been quite a morning here at the Yeager Cottage where I'm at. It is the last day of Mercury retrograde, and I have definitely been feeling Mercury retrograde, I think probably from 2 weeks before it started. And today was not an exception. So I'm glad that some of my issues are concluded. And if I have any more issues, I will, if there's any issues with this call, Misty, I'll go ahead and log myself out and then log myself back in. Just so we have a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it's been that kind of a day. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. We are talking about shamanic journeying in the underworld, and this I'm Tanya Yeager. I'm an artist. I have been a healer, a practitioner, and a teacher of holistic world medicine for over 20 years. An artist, a puppeteer. I am a pagan, and I'm a student of shamanism, and have been really information gathering probably for about 10 years, but super actively beginning to practice for the past 7 years. That being said, I also want everybody to know that I came to it from a traditional Judeo-Christian background. So I had that filter, and I'm still having to work through that filter. I also want to let everybody know that, I am not a shaman. I am not an expert. This is kind of why on the slide and in the class it says one woman's experience with shamanic journeying in the underworld. I've had quite a bit of experience with it, but I do not claim to be a shaman. I am a student of shamanism, and so I want to make that disclaimer. So yeah, that's kind of who I am and where I'm coming from. And so today we're talking about shamanic journeying and the underworld, and we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what is shamanism. So hold on, let me move this down a little bit. Okay, so shamanism is a spiritual expression where very specifically the individual who practices shamanism and is a student of shamanism really seeks to interact with the spirit world or with spirit in a way that has them on a regular basis kind of entering into what is conscious altering trance. And shamanism can take on a lot of different forms. There's ceremonial magic and ritual. Shamanic journeying absolutely is a form of divination. There's shamanic healing. There's ancestral healing that happens in shamanism. It is wonderfully steeped in a lot of animism. And then, of course, there's lots of protective magic and just all types of mysticism and magic that happens within the realm of shamanism. And I will tell you that I am a person who really strives to get down to the root, to the very core or the source of things. And I'm no different in my spiritual practice than I am in other parts of my life, where I really want to look at the kind of the singular root or the singular chord and these kind of universal truths. And so what really kind of, propelled me towards shamanism is the fact that it is the root of most spiritual traditions in the world, including being the foundations of witchcraft. And so, we can definitely look at anything from Judaism and Catholicism to something like witchcraft and paganism and trace it back to these mystical roots. And a lot of those mystical roots can be traced back to global cultural shamanism. It is the first spiritual practice of the people of the world. And that is one of the reasons why I really love it. To me, very, very specifically, shamanism is a way to connect with spirit and a way to connect with the divine. And whatever it is that folks see as the divine, whether it's connection to the goddess, or you call it God, or the universe, or the cosmos, or source energy, or collective unconscious, this is tapping into that and a way to communicate with that. And in a sense, to connect me to the energies of the rest of the world, which was, I believe, created by that source energy, created by the divine. So, all religions, as far as I am concerned, all religions and spiritual practices are mental, they're human mental constructs in order to connect with God, if you will, or the universe. So for me, it's a way for me to connect and for me to become the fullest expression of myself and know my soul's purpose. And it gives me the tools to look at those things and to understand those things and to navigate through my life. What I have really learned and what I've really been taught through shamanism is that spirit really, really wants us to just be the fullest expression of who we are. Really acknowledging the fact that we are living a human existence with you're a spiritual being inside of this meat suit, this really interesting meat suit that comes in all kinds of shapes and colors and expressions. And really, spirit just wants you to live your best life, right? Live the most full, complete expression of your life, and have an unfolding of your soul's purpose. And shamanism, for me, is a way to get those questions answered and to be the fullest expression of myself. So that's kind of in a, if we can just talk about, what is this? It's so much more than this, but, what is this in a, 5-minute period of time on one slide? That's kind of, what it is for me. I really want to talk about the fact that when you say the words, or when you say the word shamanism, I really need to clarify, because if you say that to an American, no matter what culture they come from, a lot of times they think that you're talking about Native American medicine or Native American shamanism. And while that is 100% the land that we are currently occupying, that at least for me, many of my white ancestors came over here and populated and took over. And so I must always, always tip my hat and bow in deep gratitude to Native American shamanism. I think what the common misconception is that when you talk about shamanism, that's all it is. When actually global shamanism, or shamanism itself, really is a global practice. The word shaman actually comes from an ancient Siberian or Russian language. And there is shamanism all over the world. So Siberian and Russian shamanism, Andean shamanism, Aboriginal, Peruvian, Mongolian, Norse, and then of course Native American, and then even Celtic shamanism, which we would know as something like the Druid culture, Druidic practices. The word shaman actually comes from the Siberian or Proto-Russian word, the root word sha or sa, actually means to see or to know. And the rest of the word implies kind of like seeing in the dark, to know in the darkness, or to see in the darkness. And I think that's really, really important to remember. And that it comes from a whole bunch of different cultures. And so I myself am looking at things like Norse, Siberian. I do practice a little bit of, I have a couple of rituals that I do that are Peruvian, Celtic, and then of course a little bit that is Native American, because that is the land that I'm currently occupying. I also want people to understand that really, especially when it comes to, First Nation peoples and appropriation, I really would encourage people to maybe with rituals or things that we're looking at, we want to check ourselves. We absolutely want to check ourselves for any kind of appropriation. There's all kinds of magical workings out there that folks can be doing, and it may or may not be culturally appropriate for you to be doing those things. If you're guided in doing some of those things by some of those individuals that are from that culture, that could be one thing. It just kind of, I just encourage everyone, and I don't want to put hard and fast rules on anything, but I want to encourage everyone to really just analyze that and think about it. So there's that. So yeah, this is a global practice. So then we talk about really what is shamanic journeying. And there's a bunch of different things that you could look up and, on the internet and get a ton of different, applications or definitions. But really, when we get down to it, it is an altered state that actually goes beyond meditation. It's trance work, literally beyond meditation, that connects the journeyer with spirit, right? Or with their helping spirits. It's really a dreamlike altered state that is entered into in order to kind of travel inward, really, so that we can gain wisdom about the soul's purpose. Because really, remember that spirit just wants us to have this complete and total unfolding of our soul while we're here. And this is a way to ask questions, to connect, and it's trance work. Also, things like one of the definitions is meditative trance work, in which the participant takes a journey in their own mind. So using the constructs of the mind and your imagination in order to connect with spirit, and also connect with your subconscious wisdom to gain internal wisdom about external questions. And really, for me, it's about connecting with helping spirits that can show me different perspectives. And I like to call it the cinema of the subconscious, because my journeys are incredibly cinematic. They're incredibly, can be very incredibly visual. And a lot of times are more entertaining to me than a really good TV show or a really good movie. There's a lot going on. So we're going somewhere, right? I think the difference between something like trance work or shamanic journeying and meditating is that in shamanic journeying, we're actually going somewhere. We're going on a path to communicate with spirit. And it's really, really guided by imagery, and it's really guided by imagination. And I've had kind of like the age-old question that gets asked in classes that I've attended and speaker series that I've attended, and then folks ask me, okay, well, how do you know if it's real or it's imagined if you're having to use your imagination? And we'll just get right down to the skinny. And for me, it is both. It is 100% both. Because of the physiology of the human mind, because of the interconnectedness, I think, of the world and spirit, and I think it's both. And then I love it when my teachers kind of look at people and say, does it matter? Does it matter if it's real or imagined? And I love that. Because when you get right down to it, we are dreaming this entire existence, right? We're dreaming this entire world. We're dreaming about how our lives are going to go, and you're bringing that into manifestation. And so if we're going to dream up a reality for ourselves in kind of like, ordinary reality, why are we not dreaming a reality for ourselves in non-ordinary reality, right? Or in our dream states. So for me, it's absolutely both. It's a psychological practice, and it is 100% a spiritual practice as well. So I want to just check in for a second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to check in for a second and see if anyone has any questions so far, because I just kind of did a major download. So if anybody has any questions, we can put them in chat, and I'll wait for a second just in case. And you can also feel free to unmute yourself at this point and ask a question if you really want to. And if not, I'll just keep going. How are we doing? All right, I'm going to take a sip of my tea, and then if I don't see anything, oh, okay. Yes, I will. I absolutely will share a story. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Yeah, so I have 3 journeys that I'm going to share a little bit about today, and kind of, just give you an idea. They're kind of 3 very different types of journeys that are pretty standard for someone who is a student journeyer, and indicative of the type of questions that you could ask and what you can do in a shamanic journey. So I will absolutely share those in just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Since there are no real big questions. So
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, I was trying to type it fast. But
I didn't wait long enough. Sorry.
I guess it's a long question. What are your feelings on using psychedelics?
So I'm totally going to talk about that in just a little bit.
Okay.
In the next slide, we're actually talking about where are we going and how do we get there?
Okay.
And psychedelics is definitely a part, some people's part, of how they get there. Plant medicine is really, really huge in the shamanic community. I will tell you that I myself am a recovering addict, and plant medicine, plants and chemicals are things that I have in my past abused. And in a shamanic perspective, just think about something like tobacco. Tobacco in shamanic culture is one of the most highly used spiritual plants in that culture, right? In multiple different shamanic cultures. And yet it is also one of the most highly addictive. And so literally, I think the lesson there from plant spirit, tobacco spirit, if you will, is, okay, you want to abuse me, you're going to see how much I can kick your ass. And so for me, using plant medicine as an inductor, as a catalyst for journeying, is not a normal part of my practice. It is something that, as I've gotten a little bit older and gotten away from my drug use and my addiction as a much younger person, that I'm willing to look at again, especially when it comes to something like psilocybin and microdosing. But it's not part of my practice. And so we'll talk about inductors and and we'll dive a little bit more into certainly psychedelics, and then other ways to get there and how I get there. So okay, so I will start.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. It's an important question when we're talking about this. Okay, so where are we going and how do we get there? I want to talk a little bit about the where are we going at first, because this is where my love of the underworld comes in. So where are we going? In shamanism, we have this perspective and this this understanding that when we're journeying, we're going to one of three places. And for me, it's really one of two places, because the middle place is not a place that I am actually really comfortable going. And it's actually kind of the hardest to glean information from, unless you're a really, really experienced shaman, of which I am just a student. I'm a baby. I am but an egg, as my friend Robin would say, and I'm just learning. So the idea is that there's these three worlds, kind of classically, the upper world, the middle world, and the lower worlds, or the underworld, if you will. So the upper world is where we might travel to in traditionally very high places in order to get there. And, we would go to consult angels or possibly light beings. And some ancestral work is done in the upper world. Speaking to the beloved dead, those are all things that can be in a shamanic thought, basically, in the upper worlds. The middle world is kind of your being able to speak to things in your ordinary reality. So if I wanted to speak with plants, or if I wanted to talk to the rocks, or if I wanted to speak to the moon, or the earth herself, right, then I would be taking a journey into the middle world, which is a little bit more closely associated with our own kind of ordinary reality, and therefore I think is kind of more difficult, surprisingly. And then we have the underworld, or the lower realms. And here we're accessing things like helping animal spirits. There's definitely some ancestral stuff that happens here. And things like totem animals or spirit animals. I am most comfortable in the lower world, in the underworld. And I think it's really important that people understand that any book, any person that you talk to regarding shamanism, when you ask them, where do I start? They are going to tell you to go to the underworld or the lower world. That is where you start. And there's specific reasons why you start there, because the majority of our kind of helping spirits, animal guides, your spirit animal, which is something that you really, really need to access. You need to access those lower world helping spirits in order to kind of do some of the upper stuff. And so that's kind of where you get your practice playground, is in the underworld. And it's part of Shamanic Journeying 101, is getting to know the landscape of the underworld. So let's talk about the landscape of the underworld, and let's talk about the fact that the US, folks in the US, and kind of, if you will, Judeo-Christian thinking about, and there's several other, cultures in the world, where if I say the underworld or the lower realms, people are going to have this prescribed thinking about hell. They're going to think about a realm where people or souls go to if they've been bad, that there are scary things there like demons, that this is a terrain that may be either incredibly hot or incredibly cold, really uncomfortable and miserable. And that you're going there as a punishment. And so when I say I spend a lot of time in the underworld, you know, folks might think anything from I spend a lot of time trying to find a portal to hell, or I spend a lot of time in kind of like this dismal, gray, cold area. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the case at all. That is not the landscape of the underworld. The landscape of the underworld really is, you know, it's in here. And it's a really, really amazing place that is part of altered reality or non-ordinary reality. There are beautiful landscapes, barren, blasted deserts, and gorgeous forests, and beautiful, beautiful, huge lakes and rivers and oceans, just like this world, but, you know, more sparkly and really amazing. And yes, there are dark places, and there are places of great light and great height. And I think it's really important that people understand that the lower world in shamanic thinking has nothing to do with hell or a place of waiting or a place of punishment. So that's really important. So how do we get there? So typically, what I'll tell you is that when you're doing a journey, and if we're wanting to go to the upper realms, you are typically picking some place that's high, right? Like the treetops. So in your trance state, you know, imagining maybe that you're climbing up to a treetop and then you're going to get lifted, you know, because you either sprouted wings or something that had wings came and got you and took you away. But we're really talking about the underworld. And one of the first things that I can tell you is that you are using imagery for the underworld. The best way, and what will be told to you by lots of shamanic teachers across the board and in all kinds of books, the best way for you to access the underworld is really to use your own imagery and your own visualization of some sort of hole in the ground, which is going to act as your portal. And it is best, and I think most important, that we find a place in ordinary reality in your everyday life that you can look at and see. Maybe it's on a walking trail that you go to. I point them out when I'm walking with my husband all the time. I'll see a burnt out log with a hole in it that's, you know, sitting on part of a forested ground or something. Or, you know, I'll see wonderful little snake and gopher holes, right? And we'll point them out and say, that's a portal to the underworld. And that's a portal to the underworld. These are all little things that I can come back and think about and visualize when I start to do my trance work and say, I could make this in my imagination. I can make this a way to a pathway to get to the underworld. So I think that's really, really important. So keeping that in mind, usually using that visual device or yeah, your imagery device, that's super important. The other one is to have a conductor. And this is really, really important. A conductor or a device on how we're going to get into an altered state. And Misty, that's what you were asking about when you were talking about plant medicine and psychedelics. So how do we get there? We get there with different conductors. I specifically, and lots of other people in the shamanic community, use a sonic conductor. And a sonic conductor is really it's about sound. So lots of folks know that in tribal cultures all around the world, drumming is really, really, really important. Drumming is a way that people were able to enter into altered states, whether it was through drumming and meditation or drumming and ecstatic dance. You know, drumming has been such an important part of spiritual communication for, I mean, you know, since the beginning of time, since man, you know, realized he could actually pound on something and make sound. And it has to do with the rhythms of our own body, the rhythms of our earth, the rhythms of our heart. This thing that in anatomy and physiology is called entrainment, right? Entrainment is like the rhythms of your of everything in your body connects to the rhythm of your heart, and drumming feeds right into that entrainment. And so I use a sonic driver. I essentially use whether it's my own drumming, which is really hard to keep steady when you're in a trance-like state, but it is possible. Or if someone is live drumming for me, or you're using something simple like a drum track. Everybody has a phone, you know, that has an ability to, you know, play music on it. And that makes things like shamanic journeying really, really accessible, because then we can kind of do it anywhere. You can go on a retreat and do it. You can sit in your car and do it. You can sit at home and do it. There's definitely places where I prefer to do it because I find it a sacred act. And so I want to create sacred space around me. So I might not specifically choose to do shamanic journeying in my car, but that doesn't, you know, parked outside of work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I couldn't. It is very accessible. So I use a conductor that is through sound. I've mentioned dance and ecstatic dance. Shamanic cultures across the world have used dance in order to get into trance work. We see that a lot in Native American culture, in Aboriginal culture, in African culture. We see that a lot, and it works, definitely. Also, chanting. Chanting is a way to get yourself from, you know, ordinary reality into kind of like an altered state and non-ordinary reality. And then we also have hallucinogens, and that would be plants. Again, as mentioned before, all of these have to be very much respected. But when you are using a plant in order to do shamanic journeying, there needs to be a really, really special relationship and time cultivated, kind of sitting with that plant spirit, if you will, doing your research, you know, making sure that this is something that you've decided that you're going to grow yourself and tend to. And I would hope that before anybody decided that they were going to do a shamanic journey with hallucinogens, that they would do a shamanic journey, several shamanic journeys, to actually meet the spirit of the plant, using a completely different device or conductor, right? So I know for a fact, I am just now thinking about doing some work with psilocybin. And before I even get to a point where I'm going to feel comfortable doing a journey with psilocybin, I am probably going to have anywhere from 5 to 10 journeys regarding that particular subject, asking questions and getting to know, kind of like exploring my underground questions about and connection about psilocybin and mushroom spirit, if you will. So I would hope that somebody would do that, not just decide that I'm going to take some mushrooms and, have a really great trip and call it a shamanic journey.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
When you're talking about conductors, can scents or smells be used as such?
I would say,
like frankincense, incense, sage, something like that.
those are things that absolutely, they're tools that help us along the way. I do not think for me specifically, I mean, if you're talking about somebody who is a master at journeying, right? And they've been, this has been in their culture for a long time, and they've been, doing it for, 20 to 40 years. And they just sit and they, are so comfortable with journeying that they could, light some sage and then just kind of go into it. It's not to say that it couldn't happen. I really do think that you need to be an expert in order to do something like that. And for beginning journeyers, you got to use a drum. You really need to use a drum.
Can I share something?
Was somebody asking a question?
Hi, so Maria here. And as far as the scent question, I've never used scents to get in initially per se, but over the course of the years of doing shamanic journeying, we keyed certain things to a certain scent. So after doing something, practicing a pathway, it's like walking down a forest trail that you've walked down 1,000 times. If you're not able to walk down the trail, but when you're walking down the trail, you smelled a certain thing every time. Just by smelling the thing, you're able to get into the space. But again, it's something that you have to practice again and again and again to really form that pathway in your mind, and then you can get there with a scent. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Good perspective. Yeah. I think with what she's saying about, if you've done this so many times, but to the beginner who's really, coming to shamanism and where they're specifically going to do this kind of work, they need a conductor that's going to be a little bit stronger, right, in the entrainment than just a scent. And that's been my experience, definitely. Okay. Let me share my screen again. There we go. Okay. So I think we were talking about hallucinogens. I don't know, unless anybody has any other questions about hallucinogens. Misty, I don't know if you did or if that answered your question. As the question really was, how do I feel about it? And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. No, thank you. I stay away from hallucinogens for similar reasons. So it was nice to hear there's alternatives.
I will tell you that one of the things that for such a long time spooked me out about shamanism and shamanic journeying was the fact that there was there is in certain shamanic cultures, certainly neo-shamanic cultures, there's a huge and heavy influence on the use of psychedelics. And as a former drug addict who literally was like, I've cultivated my sobriety, I don't want to jeopardize my sobriety. I like my sobriety. I really was like shying away from that. And it was a huge relief to me to have many teachers tell me, this is not the way. There's not just one way to slip into trance work. There are multiple ways in order to do this. And it's, it's important that you understand the majority of shamanic practitioners are not, using psychedelics on a regular basis. They're used for really big things. We've heard a lot about, ayahuasca in the last little bit, several years. And some people are like, oh yeah, that's just what I did last Saturday. And it blows my mind. There's a lot that has to be prepared for if you're going to do something like that. And I question whether people are actually coming from the right place and whether they've been accurately prepared in order to do a journey on psychedelics. So baby steps before you can like start taking huge leaps is kind of what I say.
Can I chime in there again?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, okay, so Maria here again. So when I first learned shamanic journeying, it was strictly no drugs at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the techniques and everything took a long time to be able to get there, to cross the threshold into Otherworld. But the results were fantastic. And so for so many years, I became rather a snob. It's like, okay, well, I can do this without anything. So, if you need something, there must be something wrong with you. I mean, it was a terrible attitude. The truth is, sacred plant medicine is sacred. When it's used stupidly, then I get pissed off. And I guess that's my thing. It's like, I really can't stand people who do things in a disrespectful way when it comes to sacred journeying. It's like, oh, hey, let's go get mushrooms and let's get high. No, that's not what it's for. It's sacred plant medicine, period, end of story.
Right.
So after many years of having done shamanic journeying, strictly from myself through trance workings, when I was offered things like ayahuasca and psilocybin, I was really reluctant. I was scared. I think my biggest thing was I was scared of getting stuck out there.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared of taking a wrong dosage and then losing my mind and not being able to get back to ordinary waking reality. So I put it off for a long time until I studied enough and learned enough about it. But since then, I've done journeys on both ayahuasca and psilocybin. And what I'll tell you is that the information, the landscapes are the same. They just look a little bit different. It's as if you have like a black light on. You know how it changes the color of everything? That's it. It's the same landscape, just different coloring. So, there's different ways to get there. Plant medicine gets you in quicker, and it's wonderful, if you want to get in, because for me, doing the trance work straight takes hours and hours and hours and sometimes even days to get there. But when you get there, it's like really powerful. So for me, sometimes I'd rather use sacred plant medicine in a sacred way, get in, do my journey, and know that I will be able to get out safely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, that's great. One of the last things I'll say on, kind of how do we get there and the devices or conductors used to get there is I will tell you there are some, and this kind of touches a little bit on what Maria was saying, is that there, we can use some of these different devices, and it may take some time to build up a practice in order to kind of have this work. But again, everything is a practice. You guys were, you know, you go to a doctor on a regular basis that is practicing medicine, right? It's a yoga practice, it's a breathwork practice, it's a medical practice, it's a law practice. Like, we are literally, I mean, we should call the human experience like a human practice, right? It takes diligence. It takes time. You may not, you know, get into a place where you can just, like, you know, be a beginner and just, you know, have journeying come easily to you right off the bat, or you might. And then I did. And then you have a situation where, you know, you come across blocks, mental blocks, where I'm like, I can't journey for anything right now. I don't know what's going on, right? That's when we kind of need to try on the different conductors, try on the different, you know, devices and how to get there. In a lot of different shamanic cultures, you know, dancing and chanting and fasting for days happened when things were like really, really, really important. When the answers to the questions, and the questions were so big and the answers were so important that it was life or death. We're talking about, you know, questions for medicine men and women who were trying to figure out where to send their nomadic peoples, you know, so that they wouldn't die. Where's the buffalo going to be? Where's the water? Right? And they were trying to get answers to questions that, you know, essentially were so important, it was a matter of life and death. And so you would see more preparation happening for those things. You know, lots of time fasting, and then going into a dancing ritual, and breathwork ritual, and lots of chanting happening. And then, you know, sitting down and doing the actual, you know, the actual trance work and the asking of questions and receiving of information. So that's kind of the last thing I'll say about that. I wanted to show you very specifically, this is the portal that I use. This actual picture is a picture of the portal that I use the majority of time. This is my ordinary reality portal. And I absolutely love it. And it's on a local walking trail. And there are times when it's super important for me to give back and give offerings. And so I will take and fill each one of these little holes with flowers or pumpkins or gourds or birdseed or whatever, and I will go and visit and make sure it's cleaned out properly of leaves. And sometimes people on the trail walk by and put their trash in it, and I go and clean it out. And that's something that I try to do. And this is just a really special, yeah, a special area for me. So I wanted to share that with you guys, because this is literally what I'm using in my brain when I talk about that's a portal to the underworld. You know, I just think about all of these little holes kind of leading down into one large tunnel that takes me down. Okay. So what kind of questions can you ask in a shamanic journey? You can ask any kind of question. But I think what's really important, there's some primary guidelines of shamanic journeying. We don't generally ask yes or no questions. We've got to be smart about some of the questions. Craft questions. I'm listening to an entire series right now on crafting really good shamanic journeying questions. It takes a certain amount of maturity in order to craft good questions. I I kind of look at it like this. If you have done any kind of reading or role play, gaming or anything like that, and you come across a genie, right? And you think about how to ask for your wish, right? The genie says, your wish is my command. You've captured me, and what am I supposed to give you here? What do you want? And you're going to sit there and hopefully carefully craft a question or your wish for the genie, because if you don't really think about how to word this question, it's kind of like the genie is, you might ask for $1 million and they go ahead and, plonk $1 million right down on your head, and it kills you and you never get to spend the money. Right? So that's the really interesting thing about, kind of the spirit world. I'm not saying that spirit or your helping spirits are trying to maliciously trick you, but there are trickster spirits. They're trying to get you to learn, and learning through any way possible, whether that's advice and knowledge that is good and right for you on a good and right path, or that's knowledge that takes you on a path that you're going to learn what's good and right for you because it wasn't necessarily the path you should have been following. So please, please, please think about your questions. If I'm having a really, really hard time, as an example, with somebody like a family member who I find incredibly complicated, and our communication isn't good, and maybe I don't like being around them, or it feels arduous, and I'm thinking about maybe throwing up barriers and blockers, and maybe even disconnecting myself from this particular family member. I have a brother that I really don't speak to anymore, and so this is something that I'm kind of familiar with. My question isn't really, well, should I cancel my brother or not, right? That's not really how I'm going to craft a question. The question, spirit responds to questions that are deeper than that. They go to the core, that kind of central core of who you are. You can ask questions like, what's the underlying truth in my relationship with my brother? What is the source of this pain between myself and my brother? Those are questions that are thoughtful, and that you're going to get a lot more out of when you're talking to ancestors or your spirit animals or your helping spirits. So that's really important. You're asking questions that are going to give you information to see a whole picture or get a different perspective when you already are coming from another perspective. We are filtering everything through our human brain and the constructs of, as far as I'm concerned, somebody else's dream reality. When we talk about, what society is, society has kind of dreamed up this reality, and there's some constructs that, just in the fact that we were born into modern day America, you are going to get a download almost in your DNA, and you're coming from a particular perspective. And so it's getting filtered through the human brain, it's getting filtered through the culture that you live in and the society that you work within. And so we're asking questions to get information to see a different perspective, a pulled back and a whole perspective, so that we can make more informed choices for our soul to unfold. That's the really, really important part. So I'm going to share with you a couple of different journeys that I've done. Typically, in shamanic practices, we, in the very beginning, journey to find our spirit animal. And a spirit animal is different than a helping spirit. A spirit animal is really kind of your totem animal. It's the one that is really going to show up, you know, for you, and that, you know, you're really, you really have this connection. I don't know how else to say this. You know, I didn't go and like sit there and think about what is a spirit animal before I put this together, and I probably should have. But it really taps in and resonates to the core of who you are. Different from something that, you know, kind of shows up on a regular basis and maybe has something to teach you and takes you on a little bit of a journey. This is really showing up for the core of who you are. So that's one of the first journeys that I ever took, was to find my spirit animal. And I put this image up here because my spirit animal, when I first came across it, scared the shit out of me, because it was this huge kind of like water snake, this basilisk thing that I came across, and it really instilled a sense of fear and awe. And so a little bit about the journey, I, you know, go down into the underworld. It's one of my first times in the underworld. I am looking around. I went through a desert landscape and followed the desert landscape for a while in my mind until I came to a large outcropping of very still, dark water. And I went ahead and walked myself into the water because I was compelled to. And I remember thinking, you know, hearing these words in my mind that said, go under the water and swim. You have to dive. You have to dive to get to where you want to go. And I remember thinking, this is so funny. I can't breathe. I can't breathe underwater. And then I kind of had to like smack myself, you know, kind of up against the head and say, don't be silly. Like, I know that you're feeling fear. And I did feel fear in that moment. You know, go ahead and put your head underwater. You're going to be fine. You can breathe. And that's the really interesting thing about, you know, switching your brain from, you know, ordinary reality to dream reality, right? In a shamanic journey. And so I went down and I was surrounded by otters, which was really crazy because I don't feel connected to otters at all. And all of these otters were swimming next to me, and I was swimming and swimming and swimming, and they were all swimming next to me. And I was taught that whenever you come across an animal or a being in the underworld, you ask questions, you know, and the question was, you know, are you my spirit animal? Let's look that book, Are You My Mommy? I don't know if you guys have ever seen that book. But, you know, are you my spirit animal? Do you have something to tell me, or are you guiding me somewhere, right? That's kind of the idea. And Otter was very quiet. And really it just was, you know, no, I'm not your spirit animal. We're guiding you. And that was the idea. And so I was supposed to swim with these otters, and we went to a lot of places, but essentially ended up in this huge underwater cave in which I, you know, came up from where I had been swimming, brought myself onto a ledge and walked forward. And then this giant black water moccasin looking, you know, basilisk creature that was absolutely huge and is very, very much looking like this picture, me, this little tiny, tiny being, and this big, huge basilisk looking thing, kind of hovering and swaying back and forth. And there was fear and there was awe and there was a lot of gratitude on my part. I bow, I should tell you, a lot in my shamanic journeys. I spend, half my journey, I feel like, in a bent position of supplication and just in awe and reverence. And I began to have a conversation, and the conversation, went a little bit like, are you my mommy? Are you my spirit animal? And the answer was absolutely, yes, I am. And there was a conversation. There was a lot of tears. There was a lot of gratitude and a deep sense of awe and power. And then I came away from that and had to sit with that for a while, because I think when I first got on here, I told you guys that I'm coming to my pagan practice and my spiritual practices, my shamanic practice, from a Christian background. And what the serpent represents in a Christian background is not the same as what it represents in a shamanic background. And that, I had to sit with that for a while. I was like, what does this say about me? That snake is my power animal. And so that's one of the ones that I did. Another journey that I did, this image here in the center, I put as a journey for information. And in 2018, I did a journey where I wanted some information about a trip that I was taking. I was going to Prague. I had never been to Prague, and I was going to be living there for about a month. And I took this journey, and I was really nervous. Just to give you guys some backstory, I have incredible flight anxiety, and I really just kind of wanted reassurance from spirit that I was going to be okay, flying over there and flying back, and that, that I was going to be okay. I was going to the Czech Republic for the first time, and it was big for me. It was really big. It was a culmination of a dream. I had always wanted to go over there and make puppets and learn how to make traditional Czech marionettes, and I did. And it was really interesting. So I go into this journey. I go into the underworld. I a lot of times now am so connected with snake that I will travel as the snake, and I am embodying the snake as I'm moving. Sometimes I'm moving as Tanya and as someone who stands upright and has a physical body of a human. And then a lot of times I am gotten to the point where I'm literally embodying the snake. And the funny thing was, is here I was embodying the snake, and I'm going through these different landscapes, and all of a sudden, this little tiny robin, a bird, came to me and is talking to me, and I bow and I say, Robin, thank you for showing up. Do you have some wisdom for me, for my trip? And essentially what I got was, you're gonna be okay. And it makes sense. Your connection to your fear is the fact that your spirit animal is a land-based creature that constantly has their belly, their underbelly, their most vulnerable parts right up against the earth. and you know that you're an earthy creature. So of course you would be afraid to fly. But please understand that that's all your fear is the fact that you're used to having your belly or your roots right, like right up against, you're used to earthing because you're this earthy creature. And so don't think too much about that. Understand where it's coming from, but don't think too much about it. And that kind of blew my mind. And then I ended up, this was really great. The robin said, slither your way up this tree and go to the very tops of the tree and wait. And so I did. And at the very tops of the tree, there came this enormous hawk. And I climbed up on its back. And this was the first time that I ever flew in a journey, which I thought was appropriate because I was going to be flying and taking a journey in ordinary reality as well. And there was all kinds of like loops and barrel rolls and all kinds of like crazy stuff that was happening. And I was able to let go, I mean, while still holding on, right? I'm holding on to this bird, giant bird. But I was able to let my spirit go and just enjoy the loops and the barrel rolls and all of this. And what that meant to me was let go, enjoy. It may be a little bumpy. Your actual journey over there may be really bumpy, but you're going to be fine. And if you relax your body, if you just relax your body and understand that fear only comes because, you are so closely identified with snake and want your belly up against the earth, you're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. And the really interesting thing that happened after that is that I, kind of came down from there, ended up doing a little bit of journeying underwater again. Water is often something that I'm in my underworld journeys. And the really surprising thing is that when I was getting ready to come out of the journey and I emerged from the water, I was no longer in the form of the snake anymore. I was in the form of myself, but it was like my spirit self, my sparkling, sexy, like, Tanya 2.0, right? Where I just emerged from this water as this gorgeous, naked sex goddess. And I was like, where did that come from? Because sexuality doesn't come up a lot in my journeys. It's a very, I would say, I don't know, sexual energy is something that I really associate with ordinary reality instead of non-ordinary reality. And so I was taken aback and very shocked by the last half of this journey being like really feeling like some sort of sex goddess with like, water kind of like cascading off of me and rivulets of water dripping off my breasts. And I was feeling like, like all juicy. And I was like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense. Except when I went to Prague, there were a couple of things that happened. And absolutely, my journey over there and back was bumpy. And I was able to relax my body and, kind of remember what Robin said and remember what it felt like to fly on the hawk and release. And when normally I would be coming out of my skin because of my anxiety, was able to look at the person that I was traveling with, which was my puppetry partner. And when he was freaking out about how turbulent, by the way, we were on a little tiny dinky plane in the middle of a lightning storm. And I was not freaking out, but he was. And so I was able to be a comfort to him. And then the second part of that is I finally understood, actually, when I went and was looking back on this journey, what that sexual energy was all about, because I met someone over there and was really, really feeling a lot of attraction and sexual tension that was incredibly surprising to me. It was so surprising, it like smacked me upside the head. And I that is not anything that I was going for or looking for, not even subconsciously. Do I feel like that it just kind of slapped me upside the head. And so this was an information download that I didn't necessarily understand at the time. But I got some information and was able to translate it the way that I needed to. And then I had to go through the actual trip in order to figure out what that journey meant and the culmination of all of that. The last one that I'll tell you, and I'll try to make it quick because we've been on here a while and I want to conclude. The last one that I will tell you is a healing journey. And so that's what this picture represents. I did a shamanic journey for healing. And a lot of times what happens in a shamanic journey for healing typically is what's called dismemberment. And I can say that to people in ordinary reality, and they would be like, wait a minute, dismemberment, like lopping off my arms and my head and my legs and dismembering myself. That sounds incredibly scary. But again, this is the underworld, or this is a shamanic journey, and the landscapes and the rules of ordinary reality do not apply. This is dream reality. And just like sometimes weird things happen in your nighttime dreams, and you may not be frightened of it, or something completely benign might happen in your nighttime dreams, and you're like, this was terrifying for some reason, and I don't know why. So dismemberment often happens when you go into a shamanic journey and you're asking for some sort of healing. So I've been having a lot of problems with abdominal issues, and was really needing, some attention on those areas. And I went in specifically asking for my spirit guides to help me. And a lot of times this goes the same way. I'm able to go in, I kind of connect with Snake, and maybe Snake is somebody that I need to see, but more often than not, I am embodying the Snake, and that is the way that I'm traveling. And so I was able to go to multiple different, animal spirits that were coming up for me and saying, I'm in need of healing, for pain in my abdomen. Can you, take me to someone here who can heal me, or can you perform this yourself? And so I was taken along, and I finally went into a den of wolves, and there was this, very large mother wolf there. And this was one of the only times up until that point that I was able to actually embody another animal. And she had me kind of embody the form of a wolf puppy, and I was playing with the rest of the pack. And there was this incredible sense of belonging and love and adoration between my pack members, between my fellow pups, and then between myself and this mother wolf. And she, in that journey, very lovingly, and this sounds really bizarre, chewed off had me lay down and chewed off my arms and my legs and my head from my body, and I was able to drain out poison. And then she put my arms and my legs and my head back on, and she would lick them and lick the junction points, and then they completely healed. And I was able to come out of that and move forward without pain. And things really kind of cleared up from there. From that, I really took away like your strongest feeling that you have, and your feeling cord, right? Your emotional cord is really one of the things that is integral to helping you kind of figure out and interpret what's going on with some of these journeys. And so the thing that was really powerful was a sense of belonging, and a sense of love, mother love, a sense of mothering. And so those were things that I kind of took away, and lessons that I took away, and was able to move in action, right, based on that information that was coming, and clear up some of the pain that I had. So those were a couple of the journeys that I had. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I will let you guys know that I did journey this morning. I journeyed so that, I could get some information from spirit about what it is, what messages I really kind of needed to give forth to the people on this call. And the message that I needed the most as well. And I thought it was really interesting what I got. What I got was, I won't tell you the entire journey, but what I got, the messages that I got were gratitude. I'm supposed to tell you that if you're doing any kind of trance work, or you're doing any kind of shamanic journeying, you have to show gratitude to your helping spirits. So one of the things that I do a lot is I do a lot of bowing because that's how I show gratitude. I say thank you a lot. Thank you when they start speaking. Thank you after they've spoken. If I see something I'm getting some sort of information as a visual instead of auditory, maybe it's the moon going over the horizon and I'm looking at it and I just say, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's gratitude and action. If you're only doing trance work to get really cool information and you're not putting it in action in ordinary reality, you're only doing half the work. And remember, spirit wants you to live this full expression of yourself. So you want to do the full work instead of half the work. And so that was a good reminder to me, because lately I've been slipping into this this pattern where I'm just journeying for cool information, but I'm not saying, okay, I've interpreted it this way. Maybe I need to go back and journey, or just ask a question. What can I do in ordinary reality that will help me, move forward or move past, or, just whatever I'm looking for. And so I think that the action portion of it is really interesting. The other way that I interpreted both the gratitude and the action was also gratitude in action. So for me, what I was being told was essentially, hey bitch, you haven't made me an altar yet. That's how you show your gratitude to me, in action. By the way, that tattoo you've been thinking about going and getting, and you've been putting it off because you're so busy, you were going to go get a tattoo of me on your body. Where's it at? put your gratitude in action. That's the information that I got really strongly for myself, and information that I was supposed to give to you guys today. So that's it, folks. Any questions?
Yay! Bravo! Wonderful! Yay!
If anybody has any questions, I can totally take them now. I realize I talked a lot.
I think you probably covered everything. So thank you so much for this, Tanya. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you talked as much as you did, because you covered so much. And wow, yeah, I feel like I can go ahead and try a journeying now, because you explained so much. So that's really awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I am just starting to journey for other people. So if that's something, if you have been journeying and you feel blocked, or if you are not quite, at the point where you're journeying yet, and you would like me to journey for you to give you some information, I am starting to do that. I feel like I've gotten a handle on my own journeying after the past several years. And I'm getting to a place where I can start asking questions, I think, for other people. And that is typically a thing that is really good for folks to do if you're blocked, or if you need help, as a network, going to people who are your peers that do trance work, that do this type of work, and communicate with spirit, and do it on your behalf, so that we can support each other.
Thank you for that. Tanya, could you type in your information into the chat box where we can contact you for that?
Yes, you can find me on Twisted Heart Puppet Works, right? Because I have this like other part of my life that is like totally creative. So yes, I am a puppeteer. For those of you who don't know me, Twisted Heart Puppet Works at gmail.com is my email. And you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Twisted Heart Puppet Works. You can also find me as just Tanya Yeager, which is spelled this way, both on Instagram and, no, not on Instagram, on Facebook. But I will tell you, because I am so steeped in my art, I am often more looking at Twisted Heart Puppet Works than I am at my own personal page. So yeah, find any way to connect. If you just have questions, I will try to answer them for you. Again, I know being a student for, something like 8 to 10 years is maybe doesn't look like being a baby, but I feel like a baby. So I'll answer questions to the best of my ability. And if you want to have me journey for you, I can do that as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Tanya. And maybe sometime in the future, we might be able to get a puppet show out of you about one of your journeying experiences.
Yeah, there's a lot.
All right.
There's a lot there.
So it's been what, an hour and a half, I think it is. Great timing. So at this time, I think I'm going to go ahead and bring everything to a close. Again, I really appreciate you doing this, Tanya, and I do hope that you'll maybe do something for us again in the future. You have a lot of wisdom to give, and really appreciate it. And I thank everybody for joining us today. And if you missed any part of this, I am recording it. So I am going to upload this onto Spiral Earth's YouTube channel as well as Facebook. So keep your eyes peeled in the next couple of days. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you, Tanya. And I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon, evening, and safe journeying.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.